Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, Melt University students, as we head into virtual fall 2020 Melt University. Can't believe we're saying that. A lot of you listeners are back on your college campuses or heading back in some respect, and we're thinking a lot about you, and we're going to continue our programs year-round with the podcast, the vidcast, the Meltdown, the newsletter, some video series and book, and participating in a lot of your virtual career fairs and summits. So we're always available to lend a helping hand, and we have a very special guest today. One of my dearest friends, amazing personal and professional. We've got a relationship dating many years ago when I was forming Melt, and he was a rising star at the Coca-Cola Company. Darryl Cobbin is the CEO and managing partner for the brand positioning doctors. We work a lot together, a specialized brand building, brand positioning firm, as we talk a lot about you as your personal brand and build brand you. That focuses exclusively on developing a laser-sharp brand architecture and positioning, which is right in our wheelhouse, and they'll probably have DC, as we call him, back on to teach a master class for us, but also co-host and executive producer of a very successful podcast, Brands, Beats, and Bytes, although somehow I've not been featured on that, and I'm trying to figure out what I'll need to do to get on that, but I'll have my people contact this people.
Vinny, not yet. Can we get into it a little bit before you start licking off shots?
Yeah. So I had to get that in the first 2 minutes. But graduate of Clark Atlanta University, marketing MBA, and has had a massively successful career. As I said, we first interacted at the Coca-Cola Company, met. We've maintained a relationship. We talk about the value of building and maintaining and nurturing relationships, and did a lot of great work together. He was vital in the massive repositioning of the Sprite Brand many years ago. Was CMO of Boost Mobile, EVP for Fox Filmed Entertainment. Great family man. We're going to be very entertained today. Darryl DC Cobbin, welcome to Virtual Melt University.
It is good to be here with you, Vinny, on Virtual Melt University. And for all of the students going back, as well as the students who are recent graduates, Vinny, my hat is off to you. You are experiencing something that has not been experienced in this country ever as college grads. And my hat is off to you. Keep striving. You'll get through this.
Well, you just hit on something, DC, and we'll talk about it and unpack it in just a little bit. But entry-level job market, particularly for kids coming out of liberal arts, was always a tough putt, was always very hard. Mm-hmm. And now my theory is there's so many other unemployed people in marketing services that will be willing to take a lesser job for lesser wages to get back into the workforce. Is that it's going to be even harder for those entry level jobs because there's going to be fewer of them and more people competing for fewer. And so one of our labor of love, and I know your labor of love, is to really help these kids get a cut above, and the insights that you're going to share today are invaluable. But DC, one thing that we always start with and we always talk about is, a couple of things. When you first go to that college campus, it's your first whiff of independence and liberty and out of the house and all these types of things. And we've heard many times from even, people very well, brand leaders like Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon,
did a Shannon Watkins of Aflac sort of did an about face with with what they really thought their college path was going to be. But it all really boiled back down to pursuing their passion.
Yes.
And talk about your viewpoint on pursuing your passion, and talk about how important that is, that the earlier you begin to do that, the better that you are.
Vinny, this is a really big deal and a bigger deal because we are in the era of COVID. You asked about pursuing passion. So, Vinny, I used to hear this saying all the time is that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. You've heard this before, Vinny?
I have, and I live it, by the way.
All right. So here's the deal, though. But Vinny, you work really hard.
Mhm,
You love it, but you work really hard. What
mhm,
no one ever said to me, Vinny, is how do you discover that which you're passionate about? Like
mhm,
how does that come? And so someone taught me this many moons ago, which I'll share now. Take yourself back to when you were 8, 9 years old, maybe 7, and you were engaged in something where you thought you were doing it, Vinny, for 10 or 15, 20 minutes, and hours have passed. That's
right.
how engrossed you were in it. Something that brought you joy, not for reward, not for remuneration, and not for recognition. So you didn't do this because mom and dad said, "Oh, good, Vinny, we're patting you on the head, saying it's really good you did that." It just brought you joy
Mhm,
because it brought you joy.
mhm,
This is where you find your true passion, I believe.
mhm,
And when you discover that, then the next step is there a way to take that passion, shape it, and hone it, and transform it into something that can become a vocation? So that's how I think you find your
mhm,
passion. And then the other side of this equation of passion, I think, Vinny, is being fearless.
mhm.
Being fearless. Oftentimes, we wonder, should we go into X career or Y career? Will I get a job? Will I not get a job? Well, most of these recent college graduates know, who are listening to this, and those that are coming up, I got bad news for you. Okay, you may not get the job you want. That's just a reality. So be fearless. If you want to take the passion that you have and become an entrepreneur, go do it. Don't wait on someone to give you the job. Go take what you want in your career.
Mhm. And right now, and we tell our students this is that right now, when you have no other responsibilities of a family or
Hmm.
a partner or children or mortgages or anything like that,
Hmm.
now is the time to try some things. Failure is only the failure to try. They possess the. This is the most sophisticated consumer, in ever in the history. They possess all that right in the palm of their hand.
Absolutely.
And that, and but you hit on this term, be fearless, and so you get to school, and like I said, speaking of fearless, and I hear it. I'm going through it with my own son. Is that they're sort of focused on one thing and then they get into it and they go, well, yeah, I don't know if this is exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
A lot of time, or, it's not what I really want to do the rest of my life.
Hmm.
You're still 18, 19, 20 years old. But they're like, well, how do I go back and tell my parents or my family, my guardians or anything like that? But at the end of the day, you gotta follow what's in your heart. And so you get to you get to Clark, and I can only imagine an 18 or 19-year-old DC. There's probably some kind of building named after you down there. I got to go check. But so how did this? I mean, you're one of the world's premier brand builders. Like, how did this
Thank you.
passion begin to bubble? Early on.
Vinny, I went to CAU in grad school. That's where I got the MBA, which you've referenced, and then I went to Alabama A&M undergrad. But let's use an
I didn't realize that you
yeah.
were a fellow Lower Alabama.
I
Hey,
am LA,
yeah.
buddy.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yes, yes. Although Huntsville's northern Alabama, but I
You know,
I know the state of
Huntsville's a
Alabama.
different state of Alabama, but we'll go into that later. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
A lot of
Vinny.
our, a lot of our listeners from Huntsville, but yes, that's a whole different country.
I'm going to give a couple of examples of fearlessness in hopes that the audience will glean something from it. So when I was at Clark Atlanta University in grad school, Vinny, um, I wanted an internship. I mean, a permanent job at the Coca-Cola Company. In
Wow.
fact, most of the people in marketing wanted that were working on their MBAs in marketing
Hmm.
wanted to have a permanent job at the Coca-Cola Company.
Hmm.
Here was the deal, though. They weren't hiring many CAU grads in
Right.
permanent positions at Coke. They just weren't. They were recruiting from the best schools around the country,
Right.
of which ours was one.
Right.
And so it was highly competitive. Now, what happened? I noticed this a couple of years before. So I'm a first year, and I'm hearing stories about what happened a couple of years before. Is that Coke would hire interns and from CAU, and then and some wouldn't get a permanent job offer. So then I started to plan my strategy, Vinny. I don't think I've ever shared this with you,
No,
brother.
you haven't. I want to hear it.
Yeah. I said, okay, so here's what I got to do. I want to be at Coke. They don't hire many CAU grads for the permanent, and a few that have gone through the internship hadn't gotten the permanent offer. So the first thing I got to do is get an offer from Coca-Cola for an internship and turn them down.
What?
Yes, I said it was a strategy, Vinny. So I got an offer from them. I got a couple other offers. I took an offer in Minneapolis with Grand Metropolitan Foods, Pillsbury Food, the Pillsbury brand.
Right. Right.
So I go to Minneapolis. I leave Atlanta and go to the brittle cold of Minneapolis for an internship. I come back. I'm now lucky enough to get on the interview slate for permanent jobs. By the way, I did that because I thought it would make me a more enticing candidate.
Right.
All right. Now I'm a 26-year-old at this point.
Right.
So now I'm going into the interviewing process. I get the job. Now, Vinny, you know this as well. Of the MBAs that they hired back then, they would tell you, congratulations, you have been hired by the Coca-Cola Company and you are going to be working in marketing. We will tell you what brand you will work on
Right.
when you arrive.
Right.
That's how it worked.
Oh yeah.
Vinny, I wanted to be on Sprite. I saw this brand doing things in the hip hop space, even though the entire brand was about Macaulay Culkin and I like the Sprite and you and people slipping on banana peels. And you remember all of this,
Oh yeah.
Vinny. It was not the Obey Your Thirst land, but I said,
Yeah.
maybe it could change. Maybe it could change. And it's big enough to have a little bit of weight, but not big enough so that the CEO was the brand manager. I said, I gotta be on Sprite. So here's what I did, Vinny, after I got the offer. I talked with them. I said, I got to be on Sprite. They said, no, it doesn't work that way, young man. Doesn't work that way. Yeah, you gotta. We'll let you know when you come. I'm talking to a human resources person whose name I won't mention because you probably know him.
I'm sure.
So, Vinny, I then said to this person, no. I really, really need to be on Sprite. So this person says to me, they say, uh, okay, I hear you really want to be on Sprite, but that's not going to happen. And then I said, I got 8 job offers. If I don't get on Sprite, I'm not coming.
Right. Wow.
Okay. I'm not coming. And I really wanted to be there. He says, listen, young man, you don't even want me to say that to anyone else because if I do, they're going to think you're a troublemaker before you even walk in the door. And you know what I said as a 27-year-old at this point, Benny?
I can just about imagine, but go ahead.
Yeah,
I want our listeners to hear it.
I said, go ask. Yeah, go ask. And 2 days later, I had Sprite. That's what it takes. That's what I mean by being fearless, Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They could have told me, get out of here, kid. Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that. They didn't do that, Vinny.
I tell you, I'm not sure I've ever heard that type of story where, you had that conviction at the highest level with the biggest brand in the world to go in and to follow your heart and follow your passion. And that's one of the things that we learned from our good friend, Jeff Cottrell. He said,
oh, love Jeff.
Be willing to not accept something or get fired for your convictions, and it'll work out every time.
Every time. And even when it doesn't, like say if you don't get the job or the opportunity, it still works out because you're being true to you.
Right.
It still works out.
Right. So, okay. All right. So you land on Sprite.
Yes.
Tell us the condition, because we all love Sprite. Mm-hmm. Tell us the condition the brand was in. You alluded to it when you got there. And then tell us sort of how you mapped out this strategy to sort of revise the brand?
The condition, it was ugly, Vinny. It was
Mhm.
ugly. The
Right.
brand had been down to flat for 9 years,
Wow.
and
So
this was
nearly,
during
so nearly a decade.
for nearly a decade. And this is during the time where all of the
Right.
uh, all of the regular soft drinks around the country were growing
Mhm.
expeditiously, but
Mhm.
Sprite was not growing. The original idea for a repositioning came from a gentleman who you may remember, Vinny, Steve Horn. Does that
Right.
name ring a
Oh
bell
yeah.
with you?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
Steve Horn. So here is Steve Horn. He comes from the Minute Maid Company. He is the first African American male as a director in the marketing group on the brand team at the Coca-Cola Company.
First ever. First ever.
Yeah, first ever. So here I am as a young buck, African American male, and this dude comes in, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh, this is gonna be interesting.
Right.
Here's what he says to me. He says, calls me in his office. He says, listen, um, I understand what it's like for you because I have been on this path before you in so many words. He says, so here's what I'm gonna say to you.
Hmm.
If you're really good, you're gonna get your shot. Like, so if you're really good, you're gonna do well. But if you're not,
Hmm.
then you're not. It's like that's all I can ask for. He then came up with the original idea of he believed that the Sprite brand could be repositioned. And then he sends me on a data hunt, Vinny.
Right.
Go
Tell
figure
me,
out.
what does that mean? What does that mean?
Okay, so what that means is uh, analyze the data, all of the metrics to find out what's going on with the business. When I said it was down for a decade, that's an average. But
Mhm.
when you looked at pockets, when I went into the research and manipulated Nielsen data and Claritas data and household panel data, along with other people, by the way, Vinny, I want to be clear, it wasn't just about me. Uh, uh,
Right.
when I did those things, that's when we discovered the brand was actually pretty healthy in dense urban areas, mostly consumed by people of color, mostly young males who happen to be driving the entire non-alcoholic beverage category.
So nobody had ever uncovered that tidbit, that nugget.
No one had ever looked at that data and said, therefore, we might be able to reposition the brand so
Hmm.
that the entire brand is rooted in that culture. No one had ever done that. At that
Hmm.
time, Vinny, you'll remember this. There was the African American marketing group and the regular marketing group,
Right.
and they didn't really cross.
Right. It's
They didn't really
amazing.
cross. Yes,
Yeah.
like now that sounds silly, but back then that's the way it was.
Yeah.
So looking at that data, that then had us begin to do research. Then, Vinny, the research was done at quantitative and qualitative research. But the qualitative research, I'm looking at the research report, Vinny, and what it says basically is people. There were people that loved Sprite, people that were on the fence, and then people that hated Sprite. We had all of those folks look at several brands. They knew what Mountain Dew stood for, even if they didn't like it.
Right.
But they knew what it stood for. They knew what Dr. Pepper stood for, even if they didn't like it.
Right.
They knew what 7 Up stood for, Vinny, even if they didn't like it. Even the folks that liked Sprite were not entirely clear on what the brand stood for. And at the time, it was about Macaulay Culkin of Home Alone fame because the brand was positioned for mothers and their
Right.
children.
Right.
That's where it was. With the debt. Now, go ahead, Vinny. Sound like you're going to ask a question.
No, I'm going. It's amazing because you assume that moms make all the household purchase decisions, but when you drilled down so deeper, you uncovered so many ahas that just had to, when you brought it back to the headquarters, I mean, it had to just been amazing that hit everybody in the face so hard, right?
Mind blowing ahas from the data. Mind blowing.
Hmm.
So, and you know this as well, Vinny. They don't let you change the Sprite product at the Coca-Cola Company.
No.
No. So, with the same product, with a change of the positioning, looking at the brand and looking at its intrinsics, Vinny, that were described in research by consumers of it's clear, it's crisp, it's caffeine free, It's clean and it's cool. Vinny, they were talking about taste. These 5 C's that I looked at the research and said, these 5 things are popping out.
Mhm.
That's about the product. And the question that I asked myself, Vinny, was what would happen if you could look at those product attributes, and explode them imagistically? What would happen if you took no caffeine as a product thing and translated that to no hype? What would happen if you looked at the word cool as in taste and thought about what does cool really mean
Mhm.
to young males in an urban area? And I wrote down 3 words, Vinny:
Mhm.
trust your instincts.
Wow.
Those 3 words. That's it. Just those 3 words.
Mhm.
Lots of people worked on this, um, and then great agency Low Lentas.
Mhm.
They came back with "Obey Your Thirst,"
Yeah.
and they and the rest is history, Vinny.
Change the world, and
Yeah.
at least within our worlds. But what you've described, and I'm going to segue into this, is that you wittingly or unwittingly, you built a brand lens or a brand filter for the Sprite brand and against that target. And one thing that we talk a lot to our students, and it constantly is like, you've got to view yourself as a brand, and
Yes.
they need to begin building that brand story and that brand positioning story right now, which is a segue into perfectly for your role and ownership of the brand positioning doctors, because I think the name of your company sort of says it all,
Mm.
of your brand architecture, focusing laser sharp on that. But what I want you to do is I want to talk about what you do within your organization and relate that back to our students as they begin building their lens and their architecture and their filter, and they filter out things that don't fit. And then
Mhm.
we're going to ladder into sort of the tactical part of that. But if you were teaching the master class today, which you are in a podcast format, give our students a quick lecture on building and positioning their brand.
For the students that are listening to this, they have a series of brands that they love.
Mhm.
For every one of these brands, it is clear in just a few words what the brands stand for. So I'm just going to pick a couple of brands. I may or may not be hitting this right, but they know that IG stands for the ability to quickly and creatively express themselves,
Mhm.
whether that be in writing or in music or in video.
Mhm.
They know that. They know what TikTok stands for.
Mhm.
They know what Nike stands for. They know what Apple stands for. In just a few words, they know what these brands stand for.
Mhm.
In other words, the best brands clearly define their purpose in very simple terms. This is the same thing the students need to do.
Yeah,
When
I think you just hit the mess. So continue that. So best, what do the brands stand for? Best brands clearly define their purpose.
clearly define their purpose in just a few words, Vinny,
Mhm.
not a soliloquy, but just a few words.
Mhm.
So
So,
Nike, elite athletic performance.
mhm.
That would be an example. Another example might be a brand that was ultimately purchased by the Coca-Cola Company. The name of the brand was Honest Tea. Their brand stands for this: being refreshingly honest. Just a few words, Vinny. That's all
Mhm.
it takes.
So to our listeners, take them through the exercise, because I try to do it, and we've had others try to do it. But you are the brand positioning doctor. So
Hmm.
so take us through what an exercise would be that they would or should do to begin building their brand identity.
I'm going to get technical here, Vinny.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a phenomenal question. I'm going to take you through one of the tools that we use and then relate it back to what a student can do to apply this to their personal brand.
Mhm.
when we have our clients come to us and they need to clearly define their brand, we take them through a brand strategy development process. One of the tools that we use, Vinny, and you know this tool very well, is a brand architecture, and it's a pyramid or triangle. At the base of it are the product features. So this explains what the brand is. One level up, we get into the benefits. Functional benefits are what the brand does. Ideally, what would you want people to say the brand does for them? Emotional benefits are how do you want people to feel when they engage with the brand? One more level up on this triangle is the personality. What personality attributes would one use to describe the brand? And then at the top of the pyramid, Vinny, in just a few words, when you sum all of that up, how would you define the brand's purpose? So now let's take that to the students here. How would they apply this? Sit down, grab your phone, and start with what are your personal brand features?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that make you unique? Write them down. Are you analytical? Are you creative? Do you have perseverance? What are all of these features? Then benefits. What would be the benefit if you want to go get a job of someone hiring you? What would be the functional benefit? What would they get from you?
Mm-hmm.
Lay that out in a few words. Emotional benefits. How would you want them to feel when they work with you? You want them to feel secure? You want them to feel excited? Do you want them to feel enthralled? Do you want them to feel a little uncomfortable because you're bringing new ideas? Get
Mm-hmm.
that down. Personality attributes. If one described your personality, whether you're an entrepreneur, newly minted entrepreneur, or you're in the job site, what do you want people to say about you to describe your personality?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have perseverance? Are you resilient? Do you are you quick on your feet? What are those things? And then when you roll all of that up in just a few words, what is your personal brand? Like, for example, someone's personal brand might be uh, when the chips are down, they know I can get it done. When the chips are down, Matt can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else's personal brand may be uh, uh, when a problem, a complicated problem arises, I'm the woman to solve the problem.
Right.
You got to be very precise about your specific purpose and area, because that allows you to differentiate yourself as a student from other students and newly minted employees.
Well, you just hit on it because we've heard a lot. What, and this is one of my pet peeves as well, because I get, like you, I get thousands of resumes, but we're thinking about making an investment in time, money, resources, capital, that type of thing. What value can you bring to that organization, that effort, or that entrepreneur? And you've got to lay that. You might have 10 to 15 seconds to lay that value proposition out, because we're all
Yes.
busy people.
Yes, Vinny.
So I think that I hope our students and our listeners play that back over and over again, because you just heard it from the expert about how to set this brand proposition up. Because DC, what we talk about is, we know there's going to be a brutal post-COVID environment. We know that there's going to be millions and millions of people looking for jobs in our spaces, and you've got about the time it takes to drive by a billboard on the interstate to get somebody like DC's attention.
Yes.
Every form of communication is the form of an audition. So that's my segue into what gets a brand.
Vinny, before we can I just say one thing? Thank you, Vinny.
Go ahead.
Vinny, if you don't clearly define your brand so you can articulate it, I love this example, in the time it takes you to drive by a billboard, other people will happily do it for you, and you may not like the brand they create for you. So I just want to put that out there.
You just hit the nail on the head, and so so let's segue. Let's segue through this whole process, run this ground ball out. So let's say our students have done this, and let's say they track you down through LinkedIn, or let's say they find your email or your mailing address, and they're trying to get to you. What are the things that gets Darryl Cobbin's attention from a reach out from a kid? Let's use LinkedIn as that platform.
Yeah.
We know that a 21, 22, 23-year-old, they're not going to have as big of a resume or set of experiences or positions that you and I have had. So we know that going in, and that's not a negative, that's not a discount. But knowing that their competition set's going to be even more intense now, what stands out for you? What gets your attention? What are the do's and don'ts in these environments?
Vinny, I wish someone had uh, asked this question and I could listen to someone answer this question when I was coming out of college,
Right.
because I did not know.
No.
Let me tell you what I thought then, and I think a lot of students think now. I will be contacted through LinkedIn or
Mhm.
other, if I'm doing a speech of some panel, and I will be asked this question: could you be my mentor and give me some advice as I'm navigating the early phases of my career? Vinny, I swear to you, I want to do it,
Right.
but I'm busy,
Right.
and so I don't have the time to do it.
Right.
So I used to try to do it all the time, and
It's hard.
then
It's hard.
uh, yeah, and then I just said, "Hey, I can't do it in an effective way." And this is why I applaud what you're doing now through this podcast.
Mhm.
Let me tell you the people that break through, though. They don't come and say, "Hey, can you give me some advice? I just want to talk with you. I'm interested in your career, your background." They come in offering something of value.
Mhm.
They say, "I've heard your podcast. You've talked about this particular client of yours.
Mhm.
This is what I have researched about that client. And these are things that I'm interested in. This may be of help to you. It may not. Want to chat?" These are the things that they break through, because what it shows is that the person has done some work ahead of time,
Right.
and they're thinking of providing some value. Even if the value may not necessarily be right, they've attempted to provide some value.
Right.
This breaks through, Vinny.
Well, and I mean, you're preaching from my playbook and our playbook is that right or wrong, at least they're showing some effort and
Yes.
initiative, and they're communicating to you what type of employee or partner they would make
Yes.
you and your organization. And that hits the nail on the head. Is that my biggest pet peeve is that I got a kid. You got a kid that's gone to college for 4 years. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars of time and money.
Hmm.
We'll get a resume in on a generic career site at Melt that
Hmm.
says attached is my resume. I need to make X dollars a year. And what do you think the first thing I do with that is I delete it.
Absolutely.
I'm,
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you're showing me now, and
Yes.
you're showing me now what type of employee, as opposed to saying, finding my email address, find me on LinkedIn, dear Mr. Thompson, War Eagle, go to Auburn, great success on your company. Here's where I think I was reading this article you were in. Here's how I can think I can read value on that. So you
Yes.
hit the nail on her head, and we got so much to cover, and we could be here all day. But there's some big things I want to hit on, and I want to sort of use you and I as an example. Tell our kids the value of building, nurturing, maintaining relationships for the long view, for the long game, because you and I are poster child for maintaining a healthy relationship for nearly 2 decades. We might not talk for a day or two,
Yeah.
but when you call or I call, we've always nurtured and valued these relationships, and we're trying to open these kids' eyes up to that right now.
Vinny, this may be the most important thing in one's career.
Mm-hmm.
Opportunities come and go. Um, Relationships, when you cement a relationship, a meaningful relationship, a mutually beneficial relationship, it can last a lifetime. And so, what I offer is that be curious about other people and what they do. You'll learn from the curiosity, and that curiosity will create a connection. The other thing I would say is that don't define a relationship by typical personal relationships in the professional world.
Bingo.
Vinny, you and I, we might not talk for a month.
Hmm.
But the moment we talk to one another, it's as if we talked 5 minutes ago.
Right.
And that comes from a mutual respect. It
Right.
also comes from times, Vinny, where you've helped me and I've helped you.
Right.
And so relationships are about giving first, getting later. Okay.
Mhm.
And sometimes you don't get, but if you give, if you invest into a relationship, you always are in a position to benefit. When you've got relationship, what I call relationship deficit, where you're the one always taking, you got a problem.
Well, DC, it's interesting you say this because we have a saying that says the letters RE start the words of relationship and reciprocal. And
I like that, Vinny.
many, many times in life, and listen, I'm the world's worst because I always think the best of people.
Hmm.
Sometimes, I wake up and I go, wait a minute, I'm not in this relationship just to take or give, but there's got to
Yeah.
be some reciprocation. One guy
Yes.
that I really loved and was a dear friend for many times, and I brought him probably 7 or 8 deals, and
Hmm.
not only did he not reciprocate and bring me any back, he started sabotaging the ones that I had brought him in that I was in.
Oh yeah, Vinny. I've seen this movie, brother.
And I'm like, wait a minute, if that's the definition of a friend, who needs enemies? And
Yes.
so you got to be judicious in your relationships. You've got to
Hmm.
always cultivate them and nurture them. But you even if and by the way, sometimes those are the hardest ones to give up because you don't want to give them up, but
Yeah.
wind up enabling it if you don't make it reciprocal, and people will take advantage of you to the as far as you allow them to take advantage of you. And so
Great point,
and,
Vinny.
and,
Great point.
and I think you hit on a lot of points. And there's another point, maybe this is my age and your age showing, but I see this a lot with entry level people coming out of school is that they are looking for instant gratification and to be the CEO
Yeah.
after 3 months. And if not,
Yeah. Yeah.
they job hop around and have 4 or 5 jobs after 2 or 3 years. And I mean, I get this thing moves faster than it used to.
Hmm.
But give them some insight about sometimes just bloom where you're planted for a day or two.
Vinny, when you move too quickly, you cheat yourself of the opportunity to lap that which you have created and or have been a part of. So,
Right.
so Vinny, you and I share a couple clients together.
Mhm.
Let's say that one of your interns gets a permanent job and now they are working at Melt. And
Mhm.
let's say they're working with one of your clients on some sports property.
Mhm.
All right. And they've activated it. Year one. All right.
Mhm.
And year one went pretty well. Now let's say they get a job offer for more money and they hop, they go somewhere else.
Right.
What they deprive themselves of is the year two activation
Right.
of the same property so that they can then learn, oh, wow, this is what we did well last time.
Right.
This is what we didn't do so well. Let's try that so that once they get the second year of the property activation, their wisdom quotient has gone up. So by year three, they can become experts. When you move too quickly, you cheat yourself of the learning.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir because it's like you don't even. I mean, it's any relationship. You
Yeah.
can't tell anything about a job or a personal professional relationship after 3 months. You're really
No.
sort of getting the feet wet.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know these kids hopping all this kind of stuff, but I see it happen so many times, and I go, man, if you only knew the opportunity that was around the corner for you.
Yes.
And so that's one word of caution. And we could go on all day and day because this is just amazing, and this has been so great. But as we close,
Hmm.
and I know that you're like me, you're just a monster reader and monster podcast. We consume information, both in our industry, but also non-industry and inspirational and leaders share. And we've had a lot of great shares with, the books and the podcasts. We know the traditional industry things, but what are your go-tos?
I've started to get into podcast, Vinny, for the last couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and what I look for in podcast are insightful conversations that look at the same things that many of us have looked at, but think differently about it,
Mm-hmm.
which allows them to see something different, something that's before our very eyes that we overlooked.
Right.
So one of the podcasts I listen to is called Against the Rules by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis is a renowned author. He wrote he does sports stuff. He wrote The Blind Side.
I love
So,
Michael Lewis.
yeah,
I'm a huge
yeah,
fan.
so his
Did he
podcast.
write Moneyball as well?
Yes, he did. Yep, wrote Moneyball as well. So
If
he's a sports guy.
if our students have not read Michael Lewis, and he's written tons of books, but Against the Rules, the podcast, and Blindside and Moneyball. But talk about, because I have not listened to his podcast. So tell us about the podcast.
What Michael endeavors to do is to use sometimes sports analogies and relate them to life. So he's this season, he's in season 2 now. One of the things he talks about are coaches. And he talks about coaches as it relates to his own life. He had a coach when he was a baseball player, that kind of thing. And then he gets into professional coaches in careers. And it's a fascinating look at sometimes, this is according to Michael, the people who are at the best at what they do get the most coaching.
Wow.
And he's trying to democratize the notion of coaching. And I just love it, Vinny. I just love it. Love it. So highly recommend it.
No, that's a good one. And when I watched the Last Dance, it struck me, even the greatest basketball player arguably of all time, Michael Jordan, really
he's the GOAT.
Love to be coached. And,
yes.
But I do. The thing is, and you're going to hear from a lot of our kids. They're going to track you down. They're going to write you nice thank you notes, and
that'd be nice.
But that's a great takeaway. And so, I mean, it's amazing. We've already run way past our time. Sorry to keep you, but I got to tell you, this has just been so amazing, so inspirational, so enlightening. It was one of the ones I was looking forward to the most. And obviously you never let me down. You didn't let me down, DC. But Darryl Cobbin, CEO, managing partner for the Brand Positioning Doctors. I think that you will listen to this many times over, because he is the premier brand builder, building that architecture. How do you position yourself out in that place? And I think you can see, listen to his podcast, Brands, Beats, and Bytes. And I also think you can see that one of the greatest turnaround stories, brand stories of all time, was the Sprite brand. We didn't even unpack how the great late Kobe Bryant played a big role into that.
Absolutely, he did. Rest in peace.
We can unpack that one together again one day when we have you back on. But Daryl, we really appreciate your time, insight, wisdom, advice, guidance, inspiration for the students of virtual Melt Universities. We continue to roll on into the fall. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you very much, Vinny. It's been an absolute pleasure, brother.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.